And I believe these learnings can impact the life of someone outside their immediate circle. Our topic for today is offer negotiation, the good, the bad, and the ugly side. And I have two wonderful speakers here with me to discuss this very same topic. The first person is Raksha Agrawal. She is a seasoned global talent acquisition leader leading high performing teams across APAC and EMEA geographies. So I went to Raksha's LinkedIn profile and I saw what people had to say about her through her recommendations. And they describe her as meticulous, responsive, and having a tremendous customer focus. Daryl Pinto is also a seasoned global talent acquisition leader, and he has quite a lot of recommendations on his LinkedIn profile. And people describe him as a great people leader. He understands the market and has the ability to influence. Now, I love finding the commonality between the speakers. And so both Raksha and Daryl are part of several WhatsApp groups. They have long, detailed recommendations that they write for their team members on LinkedIn. And they have had international stints outside India, which actually gives them a truly global perspective. And last but not least, they have such a positive vibe and energy about them. And I want to welcome Raksha as well as Daryl once again. And thank you once again for being part of this LinkedIn Live.
Everyone,
Pleasure,
thank us.
Okay, so most podcasts have a rapid fire round towards the end. And frankly, for me, that's the best part of the conversation. So we'll flip the script and we will do a rapid fire with our guests. So Raksha, I'll ask you to go first. Okay. So what's your favorite work phrase that you use at work?
I believe in progress over perfection.
Okay, progress over perfection. What's your go-to question that you ask during an interview?
I think that is, why do you want to join this organization?
Okay.
Primarily trying to understand if somebody has actually studied a little bit about the organization that they're coming to interview for. That's very important for me.
Okay. Wonderful. And what's the most played song in your current playlist?
Uh, Quite a few actually, but I think from the old genre, it's Neele Neele Ambar Par,
Oh wow,
and from the new ones, it's Tere Vaasite Falak Se Main Chand Launga.
that is trending on my Amazon Music. If you okay, the next question is if you could instantly master any skill, what would that be?
In the current context, all about LLMs and Gen AI.
Oh wow,
Oh,
okay. So instead of hiring for them, you would be the person to go for in an organization.
I would believe that as a TA professional, I should know what it is about to get
Okay,
the best people for the job.
wonderful. Okay, Daryl, the same questions, but I will also ask you. So,
it's not
what's
going
your
to be as
favorite?
insightful. I'm going to give a heads up. It's not going to be close to as insightful as Rishabh, but yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so what's your favorite work phrase?
Well, it's a bit corny and it works. I love using it because it just puts people on alert. Now my team knows about it, so we laugh about it. But dazzle me. So
Wow.
it's one of those things where people are like, what do I do? But it's funny and it kind of breaks the ice also. So
Okay, dazzle you. That's a great work phrase. What's your go-to question that you ask during an interview?
I actually ask candidates, when did you update or create your resume? And
Oh,
I believe that it's different from why you want to leave or why you want to join us, because it takes them to a time of usually 3 or 4 months back on, I created my resume this time, and then it opens up as to, okay, what happened at that point in time. So more for the trigger. I think that question opens it up, the trigger. So that's my favorite.
oh, lovely, lovely. So, what's your most played song in your current playlist?
Very old school, but one of my favorite songs is "Stand by Me," Benny King.
Oh,
So it's like I said, old school.
very nice. And if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
In the profession, I was thinking about this. In the professional context, I would go with mind reading actually. So I know in advance when candidates are going to ditch me. And if I could double that up and add the part of invisibility, so when they
Uh-huh.
do ditch and don't join, I just disappear from my hiring managers. I think that would be a good part to have and a good,
It,
good skill to master.
it reminds me of that Mel Gibson's movie, What Women Want.
What women want, yeah. What candidates want should be a movie we should be making and focusing our efforts on. Really good.
Nice. Okay, so thank you so much, Daryl, as well as Raksha, for indulging me in this, and it kind of gives a different side to you as professionals. So it's wonderful that people get to see that, and many thanks to those who have joined the live stream to show your support, and also get insight on this topic. So offer negotiation, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right from street markets to corporate jobs to high stake world of sports transfers, the word negotiation and offer negotiations are kind of dominate the space. So what we will be discussing is looking at strategies in which how you can dissect it to get favorable outcomes, look at building bridges to sidestep potential minefields, and also just shedding light on what's the right way to go about it. And that's why we have both these wonderful speakers to kind of share their personal story and the learnings that they have kind of got from this entire from this topic. So we'll start with the first question, and Daryl, I'll ask you to go first. What factors should candidates consider when deciding compensation packages to aim for, and how can they justify their expectations?
So, a lot of candidates, I mean, all of us, we're all candidates in some shape or form. But I would say, as tough as it is, know your value, know your worth. Because if you look back at not so long ago, we had the tech boom, where software engineers and recruiters and everyone was just getting offers left, right, center, and just taking in some insane amounts. And I know so many people who have actually already outplaced themselves in the market and
Hmm.
outplaced themselves in the career. Not the right way, right? Because they've kind of adjusted their lifestyle to that and financial obligations to that, the high comps. And currently, no one in the market is willing to offer them any kind of money. So I would say know your value is
Hmm.
probably a good start and a good factor to consider when you're deciding on what compensation should I be aiming for. And while there is a dollar value, look at it holistically. Look at the benefits that the firm is also offering and not
Yeah.
just that dollar. And there are many times where I tell my team also, when I'm talking to a candidate, talk to him or her about the benefits first and then the number. Because the moment you
Yeah.
talk about the number, that's it. It's a blur. No one is listening to, anything after
Hmm.
that. So, and if I have to give just one advice to everyone, out there who's listening and any candidate out there, coming and telling a recruiter, I want this amount because I'm underpaid in my current firm is not
Hmm.
an acceptable, rational at all, because all you're actually telling me is my current firm doesn't think I'm worth this much. So
Hmm.
you should compensate me for that.
Ah.
So just think it through and put some effort
Hmm.
before you just come up with wanting to negotiate. That would be
Yeah.
my top three.
Okay. Raksha, what about you on the same question?
I think I really appreciate the point that Daryl put. One is appreciate your worth, know your worth. And
Hmm.
how do you know your worth is also important.
Hmm.
Don't shoot for the moon.
Hmm.
Be realistic, do your market research, and
Hmm.
understand where you are in your life stage and your career stage. Now,
True.
just because a junior from college who's 4 batches junior to you has gotten an X amount does
Hmm.
not mean that you start comparing and saying, oh, I'm senior by 4 batches, so I should be getting X plus
Yeah.
whatever percentage. It
Hmm.
should be about what skill you're working on, which kind of organizations are you targeting, What are you looking at? And how have you added value to yourself?
Hmm.
So it's a
Hmm.
factor of a lot of things that
Right.
somebody should consider when deciding on what you are aiming for. It
Yeah.
could be a very pertinent point is benefits. A lot of companies do not monetize the benefits and show it, but it is important on the way your salary is structured, the benefits that you have, and what are important to you personally. For me, a life insurance or a health insurance of an X amount could be important. For somebody else, it could be leaves. For somebody else, it could be higher education. It could be very different. So you have to look at a holistic package. So when we call it, so we term it as total rewards, which is
Mhm.
basically whatever the organization has to offer you.
Mhm.
How will you grow in that organization? How stable is that organization? Or what is the impact? I mean, there are multiple factors that you should consider.
Yeah.
Just be realistic and know exactly what you're talking.
Yeah, there were two kind of points that kind of struck me when both of you shared. One is comparison. I think that's the source of all problems. Your life journey is different from another person, although you might have the similar, kind of milestones as the person, same college, maybe similar kind of companies. Your journey, the kind of work that you do, are different. So there's no point comparing, and that is a source of different kinds of problems for people. And the second point is compensation is one part of the overall, you know offer that a company gives. There are benefits also, so compare benefits based on your life stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's spot on. I think somebody's put it on the chat also, right? So he
Yeah.
or she knows someone stuck. Does he accept lower? My advice is if the person is definitely stuck and has no obligations at the moment, they have to take a call on reinventing themselves or upskilling themselves
Hmm.
so that their pay is on par with what they can earn not just today but even down the line.
Hmm.
So I know it's tough to walk away from money and take
Hmm.
something lower, but if you're building a career, I think you have to invest in yourself, and you can't just invest that with high comps.
Yeah. There was a saying that, in one of my previous shows, one of the panels told, "Learn before you earn."
Very true. Very true.
Okay. So the next question, and Raksha, I'll turn it over to you. Negotiations can sometimes turn sour. Can you share a story where it didn't go according to plan, highlighting what could you have done differently, or and some of the lessons learned?
Oh, absolutely. Negotiations are a part of our lives, irrespective of what profession we are in or where we are in. I think something that goes wrong and went wrong for me personally was I was stuck on a number
Mhm.
than a range.
Mhm.
I The second mistake that I did was I did not, I kind of fell short of selling myself on what is the value add that I bring to the table.
Mhm.
It was more about numbers and the percentage hike and all of that. So I
Mhm.
think when you're negotiating an offer, there are multiple factors that uh, you know count in. So one is, like I said, be prepared, know what is the value that you are bringing to the table, and it is not wrong to negotiate. There's nothing wrong in negotiating
Mhm.
compensation. Let's get that right first.
Mhm.
It's, you shouldn't feel guilty. Sometimes we feel guilty, or there's like, oh, if I do this, what would the employer think? There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong as far as it is well researched and put in a very objective way
Mhm.
on why you're asking for a certain salary, or why you're asking for a certain benefit, or why is it important for you, etc.
Mhm.
So that's there. And I think the third thing is, if the negotiations start going a little haywire, because it's not always that the person on the other side would understand what you're trying to tell. Don't
Mhm.
give up. you know
Mhm.
it's also important to see what is it that isn't for you. So as a negotiator, if I'm starting, I'm on the other side, the candidate, I'm sitting on the other side of the table and I'm leaving an offer, what am I letting go?
Mhm. Okay.
So
And it's also not the be all and end all. There are other
yes,
opportunities, there are other companies. So if one door closes, then other two might open.
absolutely.
Yeah. Daryl, what's your take on this? And if you could share a story.
Again, I mean, I'll share one of a candidate that we came across, and it was a good reminder that, you know, all companies, I'm pretty sure all of us do that, right?
Hmm.
Continue to evaluate and assess the candidate during the negotiation process.
Hmm.
People tend to, okay, my interviews are done.
Hmm.
Now it's, the offer. It's not it, right? In their head, it is that way, but the firm will continue to assess you if you are a good fit basis how you negotiate. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, a lot of candidates, I think, forget that, or they just assume that I'm through. So,
Hmm.
either they bring out an alter ego or they go back to reset default. I don't know what it is. But I remember a case, senior candidate, very senior candidate, brilliant. Everything was through. This was about one of my previous firms in one of the iBanks. Um, Everything was through. The verbal numbers were shared.
Hmm.
He was happy. It was a win-win for everyone. And then obviously, I mean, his profile, or the next phase, he was handed over to one of the junior members in my team for the
Hmm.
document collection and background and all of it. And we just got very, very bad feedback about him from the junior recruiter.
Yeah.
We dug a little deeper right to the interview process.
Hmm.
His interactions with the scheduling team or the junior members were very,
Hmm.
very different from
Hmm.
how he came across with the rest. And this
Hmm.
came to light during the negotiation stage, not negotiation, but post negotiation stage and
Hmm.
beyond, right?
Yeah.
So as a company and as a team, we decided that we walk away from it. So we revoked the offer because at a senior level, you want someone who is, we talk about bringing your authentic self to work.
Yeah.
you know the footnote can't be basis the level and designation you interact with. It has to be the same right through. So
Yeah.
we walked away, and it's a stark reminder to
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
candidates and everyone here,
Yeah.
that you are being assessed right through till the time you actually join the firm, and then obviously there's a separate business. So that would be my case of not specifically a number, but during the negotiation, behavior
Yeah.
also counts. So please think through in terms of how you are, negotiating, because it's all points stacked towards you or against you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a classic case of managing up well. We
Yeah.
see this issue in organizations where individual manages up well, but then the team is really treated badly. And you see traits, and traits don't change over an interview. So it's a good way of also seeing how you deal with others, and also red flags that potentially might come out during these interactions.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question from a candidate. So I'll probably just wait for the answer to that question a little bit later. So we'll come back to that. Let's talk about rejection now. And Daryl, if you could start with this. Rejection is a possibility in negotiations. How can candidates gracefully handle a rejected, counter offer while leaving the door open for opportunities?
Yeah. uh, I think there's no, I would say it's just keep it cordial,
Mhm.
be transparent. Rejection is always a possibility, right? You're operating in a market where the supply
Yeah.
demand is so lopsided. It is
Mm.
bound to happen, and you can't blame someone for having multiple offers and then deciding. But I think
Yeah.
it's a good reminder that, you know all of us through our careers, we'll end up being, managers and leaders and CTOs, CFOs, HR heads, whatever it is. But the person who you reject and how you reject may end up being your boss maybe down the line.
Yes.
So it is important that we talk about making an impression. People forget that you can make a very, very poor impression and a good impression. So be clear with, the impression you are making. So small things, like a thank you note, thank you for your time, thank you. Find out everyone. It's something which I've done some time back as well, right? For an offer which I didn't take for personal reasons, I dropped a note to the entire panel individual notes to all the panel, thanking them, for their time. And you stay connected. I'm still in contact with all of them. And the other way also works for me. There was an individual who rejected an offer way back, and a couple of years later, I ended up hiring her in my new firm. And she stuck with me because not she was a good candidate right through the interview process, but how she decided to drop out from the process,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
stuck with me as well. It was well thought out. It was mature, and like I said, you continue to assess people during negotiation, whether it ends in a yes or a higher.
Mm.
Those impressions will stick with you. So that would
Yeah.
be my.
Nice. Raksha, I'm curious to hear from you.
I think what Daryl said was extremely insightful. To add to that, do not suddenly ghost your recruiter or your firm.
Yes.
So, it is always important to have a closure, which is very gracious.
Yeah.
Do it gracefully.
Yeah.
Uh, Explain why you cannot take an offer. It's just because you've gotten to a negotiating table does
Mm.
not mean that you have to take it, right?
Mm.
You have your own choices in life to make.
Mm.
And if you're making that choice, explain that. And like I said, close the conversations gracefully. Thank you notes are very helpful, and be in touch, stay connected. I like what Daryl said. I hired somebody in my team after the person had rejected the offer, and this is personally for my team. I hired somebody who had rejected the offer uh, for a previous firm that I used to work for.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, at that time the individual was placed at a different stage in their career, and then I ended up hiring them because at that point they took time and effort to explain me on why they would not take up the offer, um, how have they learned from the entire process, and then obviously staying connected. So
Yeah.
that really helps.
Yeah. On the ghosting topic, I have so much of fond memories on that because it puts so much pressure on an organization. I'm not sure if people actually realize that once you commit to an organization, when it comes to an offer and a joining date, there's a whole set of processes that happen at the back end. Whether it's informing hiring managers, getting ready, having all your assets in place, and also the recruiter is also relieved that all their efforts is finally bearing fruit and they can move on to other things. And when this happens, there's complete there are obviously questions as to why, but it leaves the organization in such a fix that uh, if you don't give a good explanation and do it right, it's not the right way to do it. And you know I'm sure each of you would have faced enough and more experiences where people ghost, especially on the day of joining. You just don't find the person anywhere, and it's such a tough thing to communicate back to the business in terms of, yeah, X person is supposed to come. We have to wait another 3 to 6 months for the new person. Okay. All right. So let's just take a few questions that have kind of come in. So Twinkle Gandhi has asked, how do you convince candidates on ESOPs negotiation? Every company has a different valuation, and they usually compare this. Who would like to go
You
first?
know, anyone.
Go ahead, Darren.
All right. I would. So for me, and because I came from, just two different worlds, iBanking world, um, it was very simple, honestly. In the iBanking world, it was we all remember the Lehman Brothers
Yeah.
day and what happened to Lehman Brothers.
Yeah.
So in iBanking, for those who are not from the iBank, it may shock you, but if you have say X number of ESOPs with you, vesting and not vested, the ones which are not vested, only those which will vest in the next 6 months is taken into account.
Okay.
That's it, maximum 1 year. Okay, you may end up losing a few lakhs or crores in the next 2 3 years. From an iBanking perspective, it's not taken into account because that $100 could be worth a million in a year, but it could also be worth zero.
Hmm.
So I come from a world where that was very very prevalent.
Hmm.
But I do understand now, being in the tech space for some time, the way we go about it and the way I think most firms go about it is you're comparing ESOPs over not just as of today, but you're backdating it 2 years, 3 years back, the value of it and what it is today,
Yeah.
and you can have your own model of such. You run a simulation where, given market, current market trends and what's in store, next
Mhm.
2 years, this is where you could end at. So that's for me, Twinkle. That would be the way to kind of convince candidates to join, because let's take the most recent one, Meta, as an example, right? A year back, and go back to Meta 2 years back, where you had candidates who wanted 2 or 3 times ESOP because of the Meta stock was that high, and then we
Mm.
all went through what the tech industry is going through, and now again it's on the upswing. So I would say, when you're comparing ESOPs and you're convincing candidates for ESOPs, go with last 2 years and then have a model in place for the next 2 years. So you're giving them an overall 5 year sort of a run rate, so to speak. That would be my.
Okay, interesting. Raksha, your thoughts on ESOPs?
Yes, so there are a couple of different ways to look at ESOPs. One is, talking about listed organizations, or you're
Mhm.
talking about the stocks that are still unlisted for the startups, etc.
Yeah.
Because the valuation, and what do you really have? Now, if we take examples of few startups, or mature startups is how I like to call them, the
Mhm.
valuations could be really high. But what is the vesting schedule? Is it like, it's going to vest over 6 years? Recently I came across a 7 year vesting schedule, which is probably the maximum that I've seen till date.
Right.
Is it like 5, 5, 10? What is the vesting schedule? Just because you have stocks or ESOPs worth X amount,
Mm.
what is the actual that you're going to be getting and in what duration? Uh,
Mm.
so you have to compare. You cannot compare basically apples to oranges, or you can't compare something which does not exist. Probably at some point it may get to real
True.
money. So you have to be cognizant of that fact, because that's something that we always see during our offer negotiations. You
Mm.
know, um, and I came across somebody in one of my previous organizations, and I was hiring from one of the e-commerce startups, where somebody came and said, "I have stock worth X crores," and I was like, "Great, but are you really getting money out of it?" And the individual said, "Yes, I will get it as and when the company gets listed." I said, "Great. What is the plan for the company to list? When is the company going to be listing?"
Yeah.
And this is the senior level hire. And the person said, "No, I have no idea. When are we going to? Maybe 3 years from now." I said, "Lovely. So what you're getting here is X amount in the next 3 years if you were to join this organization. And you
Mm.
are saying maybe. So that
Mm.
maybe is a big piece there. So get
Mm.
the real value, understand, and engage in a conversation. Just because there are huge numbers that look very fancy, as a recruiter, you should not get scared of looking at those numbers and say, "Oh, I can't. I don't even want to have a conversation with the candidate," because
Mm.
you never know. I was talking to somebody again with a very recent startup, saying I have stocks worth 5 crores. I was like, "Lovely, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you."
Mm.
But let's get into a discussion, and then we start talking about it and looking at the schedule, looking at what the organization is doing, how successful the business model is. Is it still in losses? Is it making profits? Now, coming to comparing two listed organizations, organizations that have been there, again, what is the business plan? That is very important. And that takes me back to the question that you asked, saying what is one question that I always go to when I talk to the candidates,
Mm.
irrespective of the candidate, whether it's a fresher or it's an experienced candidate. I always want to know, what do they know about my organization?
Mm.
Because if they do not know and they've not researched, the conversations and subsequent discussions up till the offer and even in the joining, they would be all very vague without data points, which is
Mm.
not the best situation to be in. So it is important to understand what the business model is. Maybe a company is going through a transformation, and there are multiple companies which have kind of taken a step back and then gone forward. Case in point, we can look at Netflix. Netflix was probably in 2021, mid of 2021, at $700, and then
Mm.
it went to about $160, right? Now, and again, it's kind of come back to about 440 or something around that. So
Mm.
it always fluctuates. So please understand, what's the business model, where are you coming from, what are you looking at?
Yeah. Yeah. No, the 2 points on the vesting period, as well as what is the cash in hand. Those are things that can again, it's comparing apples to oranges, but at least it gives you kind of a base to know, how to go about those conversations.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Okay. Okay. So speaking on the negotiations part, what are some creative ways that candidates can sweeten the deal for employer? Sorry, what are some of the ways that candidates can sweeten the deal without necessarily asking for more monetary compensation? Are there ways that you can share with us? Raksha, would you like to go first?
Jonas, yeah. If I've understood the question right, what you're saying is what are the ways that a candidate can or the employer can?
Um, Yeah,
Candidates.
what are the ways, what are creative ways candidates can sweeten the deal
Hmm.
without necessarily asking for more monetary compensation? So the part that they generally ask is, yeah, can you give me X more? But are there other ways that they can ask for or creative ways to negotiate?
What do we always hope for, Aksha? But never happens very often. That's what the question is.
Yes. I would say that, it is about the value that you're bringing in and understand what the organization has to offer you. So, if you come and say, so you talk about your resume, but what have you? So, if I talk about people who write papers or, who have publications or patents or whatever, and I'm talking about technologists here because I primarily belong to the technology world. So, what is it that you've done? How much, are you a thought leader in your space, maybe? Or
Mhm.
what is it that, you're doing? Maybe you're working on something which is going to be very, very interesting for the organization that you're interviewing with. Talk
Mm.
about those things because the organization, like Daryl said, is a continuous evaluation process. From the first conversation and the first connect till the time you actually, on joining, it's a continuous evaluation process that happens. The candidate evaluates the organization evaluates the candidate. So to make sure, so understand which of those discussions are important in the entire interview process. How can you position yourself? What is it that you bring to the table? If you've been asked about certain things, talk about it and then maybe, talk about examples, etc. Because it's
Mm.
a holistic person that we're bringing into the organization and how that individual is going to take the organization forward. See, so there's always a principle in Amazon. You hire somebody who's at least 50% better than your existing set of people, and that is there for a reason, because the organization has to grow and scale at a speed which they've not, from where they are an X percentage at any point of time. So if you don't get better people, you will not. So if you have to get better people, I need to know that you are somebody who's much better than, at least 50% people in the organization. So it's
Mm.
all about how you position yourself and understand what works for you and what does not.
Okay. Daryl, if I can just flip the question a little bit and say you can't really offer candidates more money. What can organizations do to sweeten the deal for them?
Uh, I think a couple of things, right? And I think it works even for the question you asked, Raksha. What can candidates do, right?
Yeah.
So, and it goes back to our earlier discussion on ESOPs. If you can't increase your base pay, higher, try and offer higher stock because then it's a mixed bag of sort of a lock-in period till the vesting schedule. Plus, the candidates have an incentive to
Yeah.
invest themselves in the firm, not work for the firm, but invest themselves in
Hmm.
the firm. So probably I would go with that. I've had instances where candidates have said, and I appreciate that. I think I really appreciate that. Where okay, if I can't have X amount, but I have certain obligations, personal obligations, can I work fewer hours?
Uh,
Which is good. So it's like time in lieu of money. We talk about money is time. This was literally a negotiation where we had where a candidate said, is there a possibility to do whatever I can in 4 days a week
yeah.
instead of the 5 days a week, which I thought was brilliant. Okay, and why not? We're
Hmm.
not paying him or her more. He or she is willing to kind of come and join the firm, at a particular amount, which was, for that value of seat. It makes
Yeah.
sense. So why
Yeah.
not? I think those two kind of come to mind, and one which we have come across quite often. One of my previous firms was, especially for junior mid-level candidates,
Mhm.
where they've said, okay, if you cannot give me X plus one, which I want, I'm doing this certification or this course. Does your
Nice.
firm have any sort of a tuition reimbursement or something which can, pay for this? And again, it's kind of win-win for the firm because it's a separate budget. One, it kind of locks in the candidate because there's a loyalty sort of thing where till that course is done, they are true to the firm because the firm is paying. So I think for me, these three ways I would appreciate if candidate came and asked us.
Yeah.
But these are ways where we have used to kind of sweeten the deal with the
Hmm.
candidate. Obviously, the last one certification is more if the candidate brings it up
Correct.
with us. But I think these are, I would say, non-monetary angles without increasing the base, which
Hmm.
I think help. It
Yeah.
helps a win-win for both parties.
Especially on that higher education piece, a lot of people, at least if I look at folks in India, have that desire to upskill, have that desire to further pursue higher education, and with the I's and M's of the world. So if when they see proof points within an organization that there are individuals who are able to grow, who are able to get these kind of educational qualifications and certifications, then it becomes interesting and exciting for them also, that they see a path, and it's a big draw for organizations. I like the time sharing one. Time is also a big, because if you see the recent trends right now, in terms of gig workforce and
Yeah,
what has happened post pandemic, I think that's something that uh, people are necessarily asking for. You know,
still looking for, yeah.
Raksha, do you have some examples on those lines in terms of has the expectations changed post COVID, hybrid working?
Oh, absolutely. Jonas. So we do have those asks, not only from the candidates, but there've been these various models that it could be 4-day working week with maybe longer working hours, or what kind of flex schedule can I work on? If I want
Mm.
to break my work day
Mhm.
into, I work from, let's say, 7 a.m. to 12 noon, and then I'm off for 3 hours, and then I work from 3 p.m. to X time.
Yeah.
So different kind of schedules. Like, I had a very interesting request from one of the candidates saying, I can work. I can work on 4 days as I'm supposed to, but on one particular day, because I need to attend to a medical situation at home, I can only work for half the day. So, how will that be taken care of? And that's where the flex schedule conversations start saying, how will you
Mm.
manage that? So, yes, there's been expectation. The other part to this conversation on just about managing personal situation is also that I want to learn and grow. So, if
Yeah.
I'm devoting all my work time to doing what
Mm.
I'm doing on my day job, how do I
Mm.
learn? If, let's say, if I'm a Java professional right now and I want to learn containerization, how would I need time for that. So can I just work for 4 days, or can I just that? So the concept, then again, because we're talking about negotiation, if your organization has opportunities like that. So
Mm.
for instance, my organization has an internal gig platform where people can work on for certain duration on certain projects and learn whatever they wish to of their
Mm.
interest. So if you have something like that, talk about it, because then you're trying to strike a balance between an individual's aspirations and what the organization can offer. Don't wait for the candidate to join to tell them about all of this. So it's, the more you talk and the more transparent you are in the conversation, there are chances of understanding and negotiating a better deal.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very important point. The dialogue leads to favorable outcomes. So keep talking and see where you can land. Okay, I have got a very interesting question from Manu. He says, "How can we identify whether a candidate will join or not post offer release? Any technique for that prior to
Mind
offer?"
reading, I said it. If I had mind reading, I would be very, very happy. So, No, I think in all seriousness, I think post-offer engagement is your best bet.
Yeah.
There are companies where, I mean, this is, pre-pandemic, of course, where, you know, I should work in companies where if we had a set of individuals in a particular city joining at a particular date, we should organize, catch-ups with them.
Hmm.
If there are senior leaders in a particular city where we have a candidate there, we encourage them to just, say a hi, hello. For individuals who are joining my team and they have a 2 month notice period, I would invite them for a lunch with the team and also that hopefully the guilt factor ensures that they join. Uh, is it is tricky. We're operating in a market where you know uh, there are so many offers in hand. I mean, it's reached a point where if you interview a candidate who does not have offers, you question whether they're good or not. So unfortunately,
Hmm.
that's the stage we are in. But yeah, just high touch points by yourself, by the hiring manager, by the team, by the recruiter. I think all of it, uh, I think, lends itself to a probably a higher joining ratio. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Raksha, any creative strategies that you've used?
Oh yes, something that has worked well for us. I mean, offer candidates not joining or not showing up at the last moments is something that I think we've all dreaded, and we certainly joke about it in the team now. The
Hmm.
person would be like, "I'm stuck at at a particular place, which is like 2 minutes from the office, and you're still not there till 12 noon." And I'm like, "How even if they were crawling, they would have reached." So, but I think something that helps in addition to what Daryl said, about high touch points, having, the hiring manager, the recruiter connect, something that has worked well is also engaging the candidates, the person who is supposed to join you through a lot of content about the organization and because see, at the end of the day, you know, it's, what am I getting into? So if I'm
Correct.
able to tell the individual on what are you getting into,
Hmm.
this is my strategy, this is a recent thing that I've started working on, maybe something about purpose, something about the latest technological advancements, something about the events that have happened or are happening in the going to happen or something like that, so that makes the person relate more to the organization, and somewhere something might strike a chord and the person will end up joining my organization.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of so um, apprehension when you join an organization, good or bad. There's also a lot of expectation. So individuals are looking for validation at the end of the day in terms of, um, is this the right place for me? Is
Yeah.
this a place that I can spend 8 hours in a day, at a minimum, contributing to the organization? So they are looking for sources of validation, and if you can provide that in a timely manner, either through a direct connect, by experiencing their culture or sharing, then it just kind of tilts the favor. But it's not an exact science; it's more of an art. To your question, uh, you do all the right things and then you hope for the best.
And Jonas, to your point of they're looking for validation, especially at the junior level. And when I say juniors, at
Yes.
campus, one of the things which worked very well in one of my previous firms was this very point. They're looking for validation. The thing is, they aren't looking for validation from the firm or from me or you or Raksha or any senior person in the firm. They're looking at from someone who's probably we don't even know. So we tried it for 3 years in a row and it worked well to convert college grads to join the firm very high, where we invited them and a family member. So most of them came with their parents
Oh,
for that, listen to the firm and the culture, everything, because they're looking for validation from probably their dad, mom, grandparents, or someone. So they brought that one person who they're
yeah,
looking to get validation from. And we felt that we had to convince them. We didn't have to convince the students.
correct.
So
Right.
that kind of helped, and we saw a huge uptick in our conversions
Hmm.
because we were looking at the wrong source of validation. It wasn't the
Hmm.
candidates themselves.
Very interesting. And a great point, Daryl. Okay, so Another controversial question from Neeru Paul. Thank you for asking this. Is there a budget for a role? Why can't recruiters help candidates by sharing that information? Sometimes candidates are also taken for a ride if they shy away from asking more. That's more of a comment. But to the first part, we ask candidates for what is their salary, what are their expectations. So why isn't a budget for a role displayed?
I can go. It's a great question, and we're already seeing trends where candidates are not willing to disclose their current comp.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we don't end up walking away. We respect that. Yeah, they refuse. They say that I do not want to share my current comp, and it makes sense because a lot of firms are hiring for value of seat.
Hmm.
And if you look at US, in so many states, it's already a law. You
Hmm.
cannot ask the candidate for their comp. The employer has to disclose the salary range that they are applying for. So who knows? Maybe a couple of years down the line, it may just be a standard practice where the budget is just. And I see some questions on budget, so it could be a standard practice where budgets are already,
Hmm.
out there, and candidates don't have to disclose their salary details because you're offering and assessing them for the skills and the experience they bring, and eventually you're making the offer basis how they perform in the interview, and you're making the offer. If at the time of offer the budget that we have in mind is significantly lower than what the candidate already was on, so wait, it's tough. But I think I do like the fact that I'm seeing a trend already where
Hmm.
candidates are not willing to disclose their comp. Now, I don't know whether this works with all firms. I know
Yeah.
it works for a select few. Other firms may tell you to get lost, as simple as that, because it's a practice and everything. But who knows? We may get there as a market, and
Hmm.
I would say that would be a proper equal playing field because then we are definitely hiring for value of seat
Yeah.
and what you bring to the table. So
Yeah.
I don't have an answer right now, but I'm hoping it does change, and I'm glad if it changes. That's my view.
Raksha?
Absolutely, a very good question, and thanks for asking this. There's always a range for a role or a budget for the role. So it's generally a range. It's not a specific budget. It's always a range. But we are evaluating the candidate. Sometimes, it's not a direct fit, like, at this level, at this thing. Sometimes it's about going one level up or down also. So if you start talking upfront about the budget, that may uh, not be a win-win for both the candidate and for the organization.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's something which is there, and obviously, like Daryl stated, in the US there are laws in certain states where you have to publish the budget for the role. Uh, in India as well, for one of the organizations that I know of, they stopped asking your current compensation. They
True.
don't take any documents. They don't ask for a current compensation. They interview and they make an offer. There's
Hmm.
no way that they will, so at that stage is when the negotiation happens, and uh, it's about the value that you're bringing into the for the organization. So it's up to you then at that point to reject or accept. There are offers, there are organizations where you have pay transparency, which
Hmm.
means as an internal employee, I can see what the pay range is for the role that I'm playing. And I think that is a very big step in the right direction. Because for internal moves, we've been talking about offer and offer negotiation. We have a lot of talent that moves internally within organizations as well. I think
Yeah.
that's a great thing, right? And subsequently, I seriously feel that someday that should be a norm for all talent in the
Hmm.
market. We know what we're getting into.
Yeah.
And that's where the value brings, what I bring. And I said, no, like, know your worth. We
Hmm.
started with that. Know your worth.
Hmm.
Be objective. So,
Yeah. And to add to what Raksha said, right? Telling the candidate the range, like if I was a candidate and I got to know a range, that the range of the comp was say 5 lakhs to 7 lakhs. Even if they offer me 6 lakhs, which was probably a good jump over my current, knowing that 7 lakhs was the max, I would walk away unhappy.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of factors in why we don't do it. But yeah, well said, Akshay.
Yeah, there's this element of bias also that comes in. Right or wrong, sometimes somebody with a very high compensation package might be considered good because other organizations are kind of paying them ridiculous amounts. Um, so having that having that range or communicating that range could also mean a way to self-select, that this is the range for a particular role, and if your aspiration is higher than that, then maybe this is not the right job for you, and you could opt out, and give somebody else an opportunity to opt in, for that role. Okay. We did touch upon some of the elements regarding, what if candidates ghost. um, so um, so I won't really ask that question, Amjad Khan, but we'll go on to the next question in terms of how do you establish a common ground in negotiation. Shruti had asked this question. There are times when it becomes difficult to land upon mutual decision decide it becomes difficult to land upon mutual factors on offer or proposed number. Um, your thoughts on that?
How do you establish a common ground? Uh, I mean, if you get a candidate who is very, very focused on a number, and there are times where they're focused on a number, honestly, it becomes difficult because probably they plan the entire 1 year and all their financial obligations basis on one number. Okay, it could be as simple as that, and there's nothing wrong in that. Okay, I mean, I believe that yes, there are levels and designations and all of that, but neither your level, designation, or profile is paying your
Hmm.
bills. Okay, so there's absolutely nothing wrong in a candidate with that. So I would say that's tough. I would say that's tough. But otherwise, I mean, I've seen candidates who are stuck on a designation. My title here is so and so. My title here is so and so. Okay, and what I started doing a couple of years back, which at least I think it works well, is leave the title and whatever they're calling you and all of that aside. How far are you away from the topmost person of the firm?
Hmm.
Because below you, you can just keep creating levels. It doesn't matter, right? How far are you away from the top? And it's kind of opened up a very good discussion point with a lot of candidates who realize that, oh, I've been called very, very senior super something here, but I'm like 10 titles away from the top guy or lady on there. But in this firm, I may be called whatever, but I'm just 4 titles away
Yeah.
from it. So sometimes it depends on what that common ground is. If it is monetary, I think I go back to what we said earlier, right? There's ESOPs, there's everything, there's time in lieu of money, and all of those things. You need to hopefully put all your cards on the table. Also show in terms of the next 2 years, if you're giving stocks to the individual, in the next 2 or 3 years, where he or she will be in your current firm versus where they would stand if they continue to remain in the current firm or another offer. And I would say that's how it is.
Yeah. Raksha, your thoughts?
Yeah, that is very good thought there about what the title piece, because that sometimes also becomes a contention
Hmm.
for negotiation. But for me, how do you establish a common ground is when you actually, and I'm talking like a pure candidate and a recruiter relationship here. You compare what has been offered to you to what you have currently, where you're working. So, what's your base looking like? What's your bonus looking like? What's your ESOPs looking like? Uh, what are your insurance plans looking like? What are your benefits looking like? When you come with a and a factual approach, you definitely have a starting ground, and do not go aggressive. Practice your pitch before you get into that actual discussion. That is extremely important, because then you would know where you start. So if you heard Daryl say, sometime earlier in the discussion, he tells his team, do not start with the number, start with the benefits. So because that's where you need to understand. So bring in both the perspectives to the table. Just don't go with your perspective. This is what I want. And sticking on to a number definitely is a big no. Always have in mind what is your low, what is your minimum cutoff, with below which it is not going to work for you, because it's your financial responsibility, or it's your title, or it's the kind of job that you want to do, whatever it is. So always have that in mind. It cannot be a moving goal that today morning I did this, and not tomorrow I'm going to change the goalpost and say no. Now I realize that I want this also. Don't
Yeah.
do that. And if you're going to add something to that negotiation, always have a reasoning, a solid reasoning behind, why you're going to do that. So unless if you have to reach a common ground, you have to keep the perspective of both the parties in consideration to have that conversation.
When Daryl was talking about the benefits before the number, it also reminded me of a performance appraisal conversation. You never show the number percentage increase. You talk about how the person has done and then end it with a number. Otherwise, you lost the person in a performance conversation. Okay.
Very much.
Okay. So last one, and I know this is slightly out of scope, but um, do candidates negotiate differently in India vis-a-vis other geographies?
In my experience, yes.
Okay. And how so?
I remember somebody once told me Indians are master negotiators.
Okay.
And I said I would take that as a compliment, though it was not spoken as a compliment, but I said I will take that as a compliment for sure. When I was
Okay.
negotiating an offer while I was in a different geography,
Hmm.
the candidate said that. I said I will take that as a compliment. I think, we are inherently analytical, and that gives
Yeah.
us the opportunity to look at multiple things and bring in perspectives. Plus, sometimes for Indians, what is important for us is a lot of finance. But when I'm talking a little, this is a little dated. My experience is a little dated now. When I'm talking of candidates outside, they sometimes talk about how much time off, and I've seen offer declines happening for time offs.
Hmm.
My company is giving me currently 25 days time off, and you're going to give me 20. I'm not going to take up your offer. Which, in the true sense, we have not seen too much happening in India. In
Hmm.
India, we see offer declines because of titles, because of compensation, because of ESOPs, etc., but not on the time off. Or, the laws are different. The medical expenses are extremely costly in a lot of countries. So, is the employer covering that? Are you going to sponsor a visa for me? Right. And so on. So, there's a lot of factors that come into consideration.
Yeah.
When you're hiring an Indian in India, it's a very different ballgame. But when you're hiring, let's say I'm hiring in India, and I have to hire in Spain, and there's somebody who's going to be coming in from Portugal,
Yeah.
or coming in from Barcelona, Romania or somewhere. How will that work? Or somebody has to come in from Germany. How will that work? So there are multiple considerations there. So it's a very different conversation at that point.
Okay. Wonderful. David?
Yeah, I would agree with most what Raksha said. I think I think apart from what Raksha mentioned, we as Indians inherently analytical and all. Uh, I think there's also this self understanding outside of India where the comp increases itself are your 2.5% and 3% and 5%. It is what it is, right? That's typically how you look at the US market. Or
Yeah.
when I talk to my sis in Canada, okay, and they were working in India for so long, and then suddenly when they moved there after the first year, some 2.5% increase, they weren't shocked, but then now obviously they've been there for a long time. So it's a way of life. So I think that's the starting point where the discussions go very different. It's
Yeah.
not about the comp because it's not like an employer is going to give you 10-20% increase on your comp. So to what Akshay said, it's a high focus on the benefits. It's
Yeah.
a high focus on medical coverage and and all of those things. and what more help I can get and my time off, as opposed to with us, we tend to go with how much more are you giving me, and then post tax, how much will I get? So very common thing we get from a lot of candidates. What is
Yeah,
my
yeah,
net income? And I said, I'm a recruiter, I'm not an accountant, so this is what the number
correct.
is. So please work with your accountant and figure it out. I think those are the differences. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. On that note of of sharing, thank you so much, Daryl and Raksha. Whatever you have shared, your insights, your experiences have certainly benefited me as well as the audience. And I thank you so much for being part of this conversation and spending your time with us.
Thanks, Jonas. Thanks, Raksha. Really enjoyed it. So,
Thank you.
and thank you everyone for the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
and so
interesting conversation. Thank you.
yeah, and for those questions that are unanswered, we'll just take time to answer it on LinkedIn. Um, yeah.
We can do that.
So with that, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a nice evening. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye bye, everyone.